acsportstips.com with our week 2 comments of the college football season. We broke it down for you. We're going to talk about the results right now. What can we say? Upsets, upsets, upsets. And this is why we love college football. Let's talk with the big one. Louisiana Monroe stunning the Razorbacks at home in overtime, 34-31. Sacramento State knocking off Colorado. Arizona and Rich Rod knocking off Oklahoma State. UCLA knocking off Nebraska. Upsets all around. Oregon State at home knocking off Wisconsin and Monty Ball. This is what makes college football, and it's going to be a great season, and we want you to stay with us because we'll break it down week to week. We're going to talk about some conferences, and then we'll get into our post-game comments of our analysis for the week and our predictions. First, let's talk about the Big Ten a little bit. A down week for the Big Ten. We said it, Nebraska getting stunned by Jim Moore Jr. and his young UCLA Bruins team was the big upset. Iowa losing to Iowa State at home. Illinois losing to Arizona State. Wisconsin losing to Oregon State. Those are big upsets. Penn State losing to an ACC opponent, Virginia. They showed signs of mediocrity, and we have to keep an eye out for the Big Ten and see how they bounce back. We'll see how they strengthen and how they bounce back from these tough, stunning losses. The Big Ten, at least at the end of week 2, showing some signs of weakness. So we'll keep an eye out for that. We'll have some breakdowns of some Big Ten games a little bit later in the week. Want to talk a little bit about Wisconsin and their upset loss to Oregon State. I believe a lot of analysts and just, people around the Wisconsin program just expected Danny O'Brien to walk in and have the same type of success as Russell Wilson did last year, and that's not the case. O'Brien's a good, solid quarterback. He is not an elite quarterback like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson showed why he's playing in the NFL right now. He has a great arm and great ability to get the ball down the field, and he was a leader for that NC State team prior to him going to Wisconsin. O'Brien struggled for Maryland a little bit, then moves to Wisconsin. Paul Chryst is now the head coach at Pittsburgh. That's a major factor in Russell Wilson's success last year, too. So you have to keep an eye out. Wisconsin lost 6 offensive coaches on that side of the ball heading into the season, and it takes a while for them to gel. And I believe that a lot of people just expected O'Brien to come in, and with the presence of Monty Ball, they were going to be just as potent as they were last year. Not the case. So you have to keep an eye out for Wisconsin. How does Brett Bielema's team rebound off of this stunning loss in Corvallis? We'll have to see. One more team that we want to keep an eye out and we want to talk about a little bit. Arkansas and John L. Smith. We wrote about it prior to the season. We thought Arkansas was the most overrated team. It wasn't due to their talent. They have a lot of offensive talent, and prior to Bobby Petrino's departure, they were a top 10 team. But with that presence of head coach John L. Smith, we feel they take a major step back and fall back to mediocrity. Yes, they might have been looking ahead this week because they have Alabama coming up in week 3. However, you cannot lose at home to Louisiana Monroe with or without Tyler Wilson. Tyler Wilson did get knocked out in the first half of that game. However, at home, you're supposed to gut that victory out. And John L. Smith and his staff failed to do that, and the Razorbacks now are a team that we expect to just fall out and look for like a 7-4, 7-5 type of season. Psychologically, this is not the way they wanted to start the season. John L. Smith, he came from Louisville. He had moderate success over there. He built quarterbacks such as Dave Ragone. Then he moved to Michigan State. He was a mediocre coach, and it's unfortunate with the situation that Bobby Petrino left the Razorback faithful, but the presence of John L. Smith hurts that team. So that's something that you have to keep an eye out for moving forward. We expect an inspired effort at the Razorbacks this coming weekend against Alabama, but we'll break that game down a little bit later in the week. Just want to talk a little bit about our post-game analysis of the big games that we broke down. Washington and LSU. LSU's dominant running game mauled Washington 41-3. We said that Washington had major holes on the offensive line, and it showed. Barkevius Mingo and that defensive line with Sam Montgomery pressured Keith Price all day, and the LSU Tigers pick up the victory. The Bulldogs on the road against Missouri. Missouri played with the Bulldogs early. James Franklin and Aaron Murray made some early mistakes, but it was the difference was Aaron Murray coming through, throwing 3 touchdown passes, and that defensive line led by John Jenkins. He's 348 pounds plus. He pressured, and that defensive line and the linebacker Jarvis Jones pressured James Franklin in that offense into mistakes, and they wore down the Missouri Tigers in the end to pick up the victory 41-20. We talked about Kansas State. We have a whole analysis post-game about that. We apologize to the Wildcat faithful. Colin Klein proved to us he has matured in the passing game. The Wildcats' passing game was what loosened up the Miami defense, and they rolled to a victory over the Hurricanes. We think that they can now, with Klein's ability in the passing game, they can be a contender in the Big 12. So keep an eye out for them, especially with Oklahoma State losing to Arizona on the road yesterday. That opens the door up for Kansas State, and that high-powered offense and methodical defense led by Arthur Brown, they can be a contender as well. So keep an eye out for them. Want to talk a little bit about South Florida, an impressive victory. We said they would win by 1 point, and they did. They battled back on the road against Nevada with the altitude. Skip Holtz's team is 2-0. They have a team that's based with seniors on offense, led by that quarterback, B.J. Daniels, and he proved why he is a special quarterback. We think he can play in the pros, especially if he matures week to week. South Florida had a very impressive victory, gutting out a 32-31 victory over Nevada. Talk a little bit about Iowa State. We said Paul Rhodes is a very underrated coach, and Iowa's inexperience hurt them in this game. Iowa State picked up the victory 9-6, and you got to keep an eye out for them. They are starting the season 2-0. They have some momentum, and Iowa State's a team that can build off of last year's performance. Talk a little bit right now about the SEC. The SEC, in terms of where are the elite teams, they still, in our opinion, are 4. And right now it's Alabama, LSU, Georgia, with their impressive road victory, minus those 4 starters, are going to be a contender. Aaron Murray showing why he is an elite quarterback. And South Carolina, with that defense, they're winning now without Connor Shaw. That's something moving forward as Lattimore gets strength in that knee, and as he gets stronger week to week. Look for the old ball coach to use ball control and use that defense led by Clowney to stuff people. And those are the top 4 in the SEC: Alabama, LSU, Georgia, and South Carolina. Tennessee 2-0. They take on Florida this week. That's going to be a big matchup. We'll have a breakdown of that game. But in our estimation, still right at this point, the SEC showing why they're the number 1 conference. We're going to have breakdowns. It looks to be a little bit of an off week after last week's great games. It looks to be a little bit of an off week in terms of marquee matchups. A couple of that just stand out are Notre Dame, Michigan State, and USC and Stanford. We're going to have an analysis of those games coming up in the early part of this week. So stay with us. We think college football is unbelievable. This is why we love it, because college football, the unexpected, is what makes these rivalries and the game so exciting. So stay with us all season long. www.acsportstips.com.